So how much do you expect prices to go down as a result of this?
Well, Pete, we were very clear before the last election that we wanted to see wholesale prices moving towards $70 a megawatt hour. We're actually beyond that now. Indeed, we were even before the COVID crisis hit. We've seen wholesale prices close to half of where they were, which is really good news. And remember, that's essentially the price that big factories, machines that are powered by electricity, so heavy industry, that's the price that they get. And that's incredibly important for jobs and manufacturing in this country. So those prices are around half of where they were, and we want to see that being passed on to customers as contracts roll over. They obviously, every customer is different, the timing of the rollover, but we do want to see that pass through. That's extremely important for jobs in this country. It's extremely important for coming out of the recovery, coming out and recovering well. And it's extremely important for ensuring we have a strong economy.
So if those wholesale prices have halved, then technically should the ordinary person's power bill halve?
No, the ordinary person's power bill is wholesale prices are about a third of the total, but for heavy industry, it's the vast majority of the total, and that's a crucial point as we want to see job recovery happening on the other side of COVID-19. This is a big lever. Energy costs are extremely important to manufacturing in this country.
I'm just wondering, just that person at home, say my mum at home, wondering how much she might have knocked off her power bill. What's the expectation?
Yeah,
have you got a ballpark?
So typically wholesale prices are around a third or a half, depending on the state of the retail power bill. We don't expect to see prices down at that very low level they are now during the COVID crisis. But we have seen, even before COVID hit, a significant reduction in wholesale prices. And this legislation says quite clearly that a substantial and sustained drop in wholesale prices needs to be passed through. The ACCC chairman, Rod Sims, is looking at this very, very carefully. He wants to see the pass-through, as do we.
Well, how much of those reductions, Minister, is a result, of these threats against power companies when compared to, the huge uptake in the amount of solar panels that people are taking up? What's the comparison there?
Well, there's a range of factors at work here, Pete. First of all, there's no doubt we're seeing extra supply coming into the market. It's a mix of different fuel sources that we're seeing, but we have seen an enormous amount of new supply coming into the market in the last couple of years. But on top of that, we haven't seen the big exits. We saw a huge exit of Hazelwood, for instance, in Victoria a few years back. We haven't seen those big exits.
But renewable energy investment's
extra
dropped by 50%, hasn't it?
Well, no, that's not right. I mean, we've seen extraordinary investment. Last year, we saw $9 billion of investment, 6.3 gigawatts, 6,300 megawatts, unprecedented level of investment happening. So there's some misinformation running around on this, and we're continuing to see those high levels of investment. So that supply coming in is having a very, very big impact. But importantly, we've seen less supply leaving. It's putting downward pressure on prices. It was happening before COVID hit. We want to see that pass through happening. The big stick legislation requires that to occur.
OK, just onto fuel. I know that you signed a big deal in the United States with the US last week, $100 million worth of fuel. It's being kept, as I understand, in the US, right, because we don't have storage capabilities here. So what sort of plans are in place to have storage capabilities here in Australia? Because if there is a supply issue, how are we going to get it?
Oh, well, there's many different scenarios, and there's certainly scenarios where having it in the US works absolutely fine. There's obviously extreme scenarios where you want to have it locally, which is why we've said very clearly we want more local storage. That's been a challenge in recent times. In fact, globally, there's been very little spare storage. The US is one of the few places where there's accessible storage, which is why we've bought at these record low prices. We're buying at these record low prices, and critically, we have a place to store it for now. But we do want more local storage. And now that is all tied up with ensuring we have a clear strategy forward for our refineries. We're working closely with those refineries. Pete, this is crucial work to do to ensure that we have that fuel security we need for this country for many years to come.
But what good is it if there is a supply issue? Let's say war takes off. It could happen at any time. We know that. But it takes 4 weeks, right, to get fuel from the US over to Australia, and then we don't even have the capabilities to refine it.
Well, that's not correct. So it's substantially less than that if you're taking it from, depending on where you're taking it from. But look, the point here is that there are many scenarios where having fuel in the US is extremely helpful to dealing with a disruption. There's obviously extreme scenarios where that's not the case, which is why we've made it very clear. We want to see more local storage. We're working through with refineries and others the process to make sure we get that into place. And of course, that positions us well to deal with what is an issue that's emerged because we've seen the rundown of our own crude oil production in Bass Strait, and that needs to be replaced. We're looking for longer-term replacement in the Northern Territory. The Beetaloo Basin offers enormously prospective reserves of oil and gas, but in the meantime, we do have to enhance our storages.
So how many days' worth of supply do we have now in Australia?
Well, we have both, depending on your type of fuel, whether it's diesel, petrol or aviation avgas, it's in the 20s, and then an additional in the 20s for crude oil on top of that, which is often left out of these numbers. And in fact, we sit on a total, including in the supply chain coming to Australia, in the 80s. So there's a substantial amount there, but it's less than we would like. Yeah. And we've made no bones about the fact that we want to see more storage, more fuel. We want to make sure we have control over our own sovereignty. Fuel security is an enormously important issue in dealing with it.
So what's that 40-odd days, which is well short of 90 days that we've got to have, right?
No, that's not correct. So we have, if you want to go into the detail, we have, in fact, IEA days between 55 and 80, depending on your definition. And, of course, that includes both crude oil, which is usually left out when those on the opposite side of politics talk about this. We have diesel, avgas and petrol, which is the finished product. And we also have fuel on water, either in our ports or approaching Australia, and that total comes between 50 and indeed it's around 85 when you include the water of the on-water fuel that's coming to Australia.